Welcome to B2B Growth Jump. I'm your host Tony from LandingRabbit. In this episode, I'm joined by Chris from RealFlow. We're going to discuss why Chris decided to build RealFlow, why videos are so important in B2B sales today, and how you can get started with videos too. Let's dive in. Hey Chris, thanks for joining the show.
Hey Tony, thank you for having me on.
Could you share a bit about RealFlow? Why did you start it? What's your background?
Yeah,
How did it
sure.
all
So,
start?
absolutely. So, RealFlow is startup number 3 for me. So, if I go back to the beginning, my first startup was out of university nearly 20 years ago now. Myself and a couple of friends, we set up a job board in our final year at university called Rate My Placement, which was a bit of a early version of Glassdoor. Before Glassdoor launched, we were there first, providing students with the ability to rate and review their internships, their work placements, evolved that into a job board. We bootstrapped that company and grew it into one of the UK's leading players in the early careers market, offering a whole portfolio of products to connect employers with young people, university students, school leavers. And that business is still going strong today. My 2 co-founders still run that business 20 years later. I did a partial exit of our management buyout back in 2022, but I'm still on the board and provide some guidance where I can and help out with that business. But yeah, great business. Now recently rebranded, is now called Hire In. So anyone in the early career space probably familiar with that. And then within that, my sort of stumble into the world of SaaS. In that business, the first one, we used to do lots of student events out on campus. We were capturing students' details on pen and paper and clipboards not that long ago, sort of 2010, 11. And this was around the time iPads had just come out, apps were becoming a thing. I'm really aging myself here. And we built a mobile app to capture data from students. So rather than use a clipboard and pen and paper, we would put an iPad in front of them and a form-based software that worked offline and could be customized, did your classics or solve your own problem. And then we realized there was potential with this product. So we spun it out as a separate company called Accrue. My co-founder in RealFlow, Andy, he came with me on the journey. And we had a great run with that business over sort of 2013 to 2019. We scaled the company, we raised around 2.5 million in funding. We were up to a team of about 50 people, and we were really on our path to sort of 10 million ARR. And we were very, very lucky to get acquired by a US marketing tech company called Integrate in 2019, just before COVID, because by that point, our product was exclusively for B2B trade shows. It was a universal lead capture solution that exhibitors would use at events to capture leads and get them back into their marketing CRM systems. So yeah, timing wise, we were incredibly fortunate when the acquisition came along, and it was a very good outcome for everybody. And then obviously a year later, COVID hits, so the story could have been very different. But my co-founder and I, we worked for the US company that acquired us as part of that deal for 3 years, which was very much in the B2B marketing tech space. So working with lots of large enterprises, their marketing teams. Took a couple of years off and then started working on RealFlow in 2024.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. As someone who's also exited my business, how did you feel after selling? Like, what was the instant kind of like feeling when you signed the papers and knew that okay, it's not mine any longer?
I would say, I mean, it's such a roller coaster journey, as you know, that it was the most crazy, stressful, wild 3 or 4 months of my life, from sort of flying out to the US and agreeing the deal in principle to coming back and wading through the due diligence and all the legal stuff, the paperwork that comes with it, whilst trying to make sure the business keeps running, because a lot of people were like, you should expect that this won't happen. Most deals don't get over the line. So whilst also it was crazy, I had a newborn baby at home as well. So it was a wild few months of my life. So I'll be honest, like when we signed the deal that late that night, probably relief was the first relief, just to get it done and get it over the line. And then a whole mixture of emotions, right? As you sort of go through, accepting that this is no longer your thing. You're part of someone else's business and this is their story now. You've sort of switched tracks and, taken the team with us. But Yeah, like it was an amazing experience to go through, and like no regrets. And as I say, we learned a huge amount, made some amazing connections in the States. And whilst the story, because of COVID, didn't go the way we kind of thought it eventually would, it's still a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I remember the feeling being I felt like relieved because of the fact that I could finally tell many people that I had to play this sort of games with my team because I didn't want to worry anyone.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just have speculation around that. Okay, is this company go somewhere and so forth. I kept it like with my founders. We were just like running things as we were normally, but after when we signed and got this signed papers back, we were like, finally we can kind of
Yeah.
tell everyone that what we've been working on, and yeah, that was, I think that was the best kind of like the moment that I remember. People often ask me that, okay, how did I celebrate that? And I walked to Stoke Newington, had an ice cream. That was my celebration. I don't know what you did, but that.
Yeah, ours was because it was a US deal. By the time we ended up signing the paperwork, it was late at night. So we were in one of the big law firms in the city, sat around this massive boardroom table. I can't remember what time it was. Yeah, late at night with stacks of paper everywhere, waiting for the phone to ring. So the phone rings, and they're like, "Yeah, we can confirm everything's been sort of countersigned in the States." So we went straight to the pub next door, and that was a late night where my memories become a bit faded. But yeah, we had a lot of fun, and then it was great. I think I went the next day, got the train down to the south coast where my family were, and caught up with wife and kids, and managed to take a few days off just to sort of decompress a bit and enjoy that time before the work began again.
Yeah, it doesn't end there. What then inspired you to build RealFlow? What
Yeah,
was kind of the trigger?
yeah. Let's talk more about that. So end of 2024, so we've been working on RealFlow for about 18 months now, so still relatively early stage. Andy and I, we were getting itchy feet. We'd been out the game for a couple of years, seeing everything that was going on with AI, both feeling like we've got plenty of miles left on the clock, and that sort of hunger and motivation to build again. And we're a great pair. Yeah, Andy is product engineering, design. I'm more on the sort of go-to-market commercial side. So we started kicking ideas around in 2024, and a few things came together really. One was looking at the rise of video. And obviously, I mean, even since we started thinking about RealFlow in 2024, the world has changed a lot with AI, but some of these principles still apply. Yeah, just the rise and influence of video. We were early users of video in Accrue, the previous business. We were fortunate to have a great videographer in the team. We saw the power of video to educate audiences and engage people and capture people's attention. And then almost in contrast to that, we were looking at like B2B marketing landscape. We know buyer behavior, buyer demographics, things are changing fast. The way buyers research, how they consume content. For the first time ever, the majority of B2B decision makers are millennials and Gen Z, different types of audiences. So that was going on. And then finally, just which something I know close to your heart, B2B websites, B2B landing pages. You go and look at most businesses' websites and they still look like they did 10 years ago, right? We've sort of got this tried and trusted formula for building B2B sites. So it was the combination of those things, like, can we look at a video product that reflected the changing audiences and improving web experiences? They were sort of seeds of the idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. I've obviously taken a look at your product closely. We've collaborated in a project. Plus, I'm curious about new tech. But for people who haven't yet visited RealFlow, what's the big difference between like having YouTube videos or Loo videos or what else our founders are already using? What's the difference between RealFlow and other video tools?
Yeah, so I guess we're operating at a bit of an intersection between various tools that are out there. So RealFlow is an interactive video product, a short form video product for websites, for landing pages. And the whole idea of being, can we make it really easy for a company to create and bring that similar kind of short form video content that we know works so well on social, but bring that to very easily to an existing website experience. And rather than just a traditional video embed that somebody sort of passively presses play and just sits and watches, RealFlow is interactive, and it typically, although we do have an embedded version of the player, most of our customers use our overlay player, which typically occupies the same real estate as a chatbot. So you land on a website, you would see a talking head in the bottom right hand corner. Typically it is we can talk more about AI and avatars, but it is a real person from that business, maybe the founder, maybe an exec, subject matter expert. And when they open up the RealFlow player, they watch a short form video, and then they can interact with it. They can select one of the buttons, they can play more video content, they can navigate deeper. So all about really giving the visitor, the buyer, a more engaging, guided experience, help them to help themselves navigate the website, find the information they're looking for, whilst crucially seeing and hearing from real people. There is a crisis of trust in B2B that we'll dig into, but I think there's something powerful about seeing and hearing from real people at that business, building that trust, building that connection, showing that there are real people behind this business, this brand. So that's what we're building, and then everything that comes with it behind the scenes to kind of bring all this to life kind of easily and quickly.
Yeah, as someone who's building websites or helping others to build websites, it feels like a great one where someone is actually explaining, and then you can click a button to navigate to another section, and still the story continues. You can still kind of like you're still with the same widget or layover on the page, and that's a key difference between like maybe watching a YouTube video and then jumping somewhere else and the story kind of breaks and kind of discontinues. So yeah, I really like the idea.
Particularly, if you're a brand that's using video on social, on LinkedIn, there's something quite powerful about bridging that gap between, I've seen that founder or seen that exec on LinkedIn, I'm now on the site, I'm seeing them again. That often on the homepage, the objective for RealFlow on the homepage is get people off the homepage as quick as possible. Like as we both know, homepages are hard because they're trying to cater for everybody. So if we can quickly guide somebody off the homepage and get them deeper to the most relevant part of the site for them, where meeting them where they are in their journey with a short video, it's quite a powerful way of helping sort of guide somebody.
Yeah, totally. That's because often founders get stuck with the sort of like, what should I say on the homepage, because they want to bring everything out there. I'm currently funny enough, I'm currently struggling with the same thing, because I've got a lot of kind of different angles how I could approach the homepage, and you kind of need to figure out that what's the entry level information, what do you want to have there, and then what are the other pages where we would want to direct others. And it's surprisingly difficult to find that good balance where you inspire someone, you make it simple enough for someone who's doesn't know you or is just like a decision maker in the team, but reviews the page only once. And you need to kind of cater different audiences, and that's why I like the approach that you've taken with the.
I think one of my pain points, I think, in B2B in particular, one of my bugbears is we over-index and over-obsess on conversion rates in B2B on websites. And I just think it's such a backward approach. Like, the reality is conversion on a B2B website, when somebody fills in the form or books a demo or does the action, that is a lagging indicator of maybe you've done 12 months of good work. Maybe they've been on your website 50 times along that journey, which is true. A typical number of like B2B buyers will visit a website tens of times, maybe hundreds of times on a potentially multi-month, multi-year journey. So I often think when it drives me mad when like B2B teams just obsess over like the last click conversion, when actually 99% of traffic on B2B websites aren't. They're in converting mode, they're in research mode. They could be anywhere on their journey. They could be learning about you for the very first time. This could be the 40th time they've been back to your site. So I think coming back to like what you were alluding to, of how do you ultimately just try and give your buyers a better experience on the site, help them find the answers to the questions they're looking for. And if you do that well and the navigation's good and the content's good, you rise the tide and the conversions will come, rather than like, let's cram in another book a demo button, or force people to fill in the gated forms. I just think that's a really kind of antiquated way of approaching websites today.
Yeah, totally. With my previous business, it was fully self-serve, no sales team at all, and I learned a ton about like what type of content you need to be able to convince the B2B team, because it's always like, even if we had very simple product in terms of like quite low cost, someone can start it without a lot of help from others. So it wasn't like the barrier to entry wasn't that high, but the I still had to convince all sort of security people, GDPR people, like a finance team, marketing managers, even though they were not using the product and so forth. Like a lot of people in the company had to be involved. And one of my like favorite pieces of content in a previous business was GDPR explained to someone who doesn't know our business. So it was like a simple document that was just like telling that, okay, here's how this works, here's how it's related to GDPR. You don't need to know everything about this product, but this is like a dummy version of it. And it was like that signed so many customers, because it's like there is this point where someone comes to your website, they learn about it, they get excited, and then they share it with the team one way or another. Like maybe they keep it to themselves for a bit longer, or they share it straight away, but at some point they have to share it. And then that's the moment when you need a lot more content than you probably thought.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and I think the latest stats are 8 to 12 buyers in a buying committee these days. When you're selling to a business, you're typically not selling to one person. Even with a product-led self-serve products, typically there are, even if you don't know about them, there are more people behind the scenes, let alone if you're selling to mid-markets, annual contracts, bigger deals. You've got to be there for lots of different types of stakeholders. And I think I read a really great article recently about, I think the headline was like, prove that you're human. In this age today of AI, when it's never been easier to spin up a beautiful looking, as your product does, spin up beautiful looking website, beautiful looking web pages, build a very lightweight product that's probably beyond the minimum viable product, but get something out there. I think a lot of buyers today are perhaps in the market and quite skeptical when they look at certainly startups. Is this just a 15-year-old kid who's vibe coded this? Who are the people behind this product? Are they still going to be here in a year? Are they going to get bored of this one and put it? I was looking at one the other day I thought was quite cool, and when I did a bit more digging, I found the founder, young guy, and this was one of like 20 products that he sort of built and out there. And as a potential buyer, I was like, that doesn't give me confidence that there's something here, or in 6 months' time there's still going to be a product here. So I think for any like first-time founders or startups in this age right now, proving that story, proving that the sort of that proof that you're human behind the business, I think is more important than ever before.
Yeah, totally. And I get that all the time in sales calls, that people come to the meeting, they tell that like they've seen my videos, they've seen on like, my LinkedIn posts, and they feel they know me and they know our product, which is a great starting point. Like often the discussion is not about our product any longer at all. It's like, okay, so what are your challenges? And that's straight away. I don't need to spend like 10-20 minutes telling what I'm doing, what our company does, what the solution is. They kind of come prepared and are like, okay, I feel like I know you, and that's a great asset to have. I think it's the beauty of video. When we kind of like, when we look at our LinkedIn feed, we can see a lot of AI carpets there. How do you think video is going to evolve? Is that a risk for videos as well, or how do you see the future?
Oh, it's such a... I've got an article that I haven't published yet around the sort of authenticity paradox that I think we're facing right now, in that, on one side, the video models are getting so good. It is wild. We've all seen the examples, maybe you've played with them. So on one side, the ability to go and create incredible looking and sounding video has kind of never been easier. And then on the flip side of that, as you alluded to, just the sheer amount of AI slop and garbage that we're seeing that's filling up our feeds that is almost turning. I think one of the reasons we've had a really good start to the year, I get this sort of underlying sense from people of this almost push back on AI video and sort of draw towards, we do need to be doing real authentic video, and actually this is the only thing we've got that's like unique about us is our team and our people and our story, and getting that out and sort of building that trust and personality that you can't do with full AI video. Now that's not to say AI cannot be used and isn't used in RealFlow, and I think where we've sort of tried to get the right balance is when you're and we have got customers, like I should say, we've got a full spectrum of customers. We have got some customers who, when it comes to the video creation, are just picking a fictional thing, pixels off the screen. Yeah, I want this person with brown hair, wear glasses, have this accent, create the talking head video. And there's obviously a whole bunch of tools can do it now. HeyGen, Synthesia, amazing products. And there's such a time and a place for that type of video content, I think, where the end user perhaps doesn't really care who's telling them it. They maybe want to hear it in their language, or it's customer support and they just prefer to watch and listen over read a boring, support article. But when it comes to go-to-market content, I just think it has to be a real person at your business. And we do use, I've got trained stand-ins, as we call it, in our product, but avatars trained on me, so it's real. That is my footage, and then I record the audio, so that is me speaking. This is how I sound. This is how I speak normally, and I can use that on my avatar to create that is me in the video, and that is me speaking. I just didn't sit in front of the camera. And we in the RealFlow product, at least, we stamp it with, this is AI has been used to kind of help create this video. So we're not about like tricking the audience, but I think it still passes the authenticity test of like, well, yeah, that is me in the video, and yes, that is me speaking. I just didn't sit in front of the camera. So there is this spectrum right now, I think, that's important for people to kind of understand. And in our use, like we've got a new customer came on board recently where the CEO, very camera shy, didn't really want to get back in front of camera, but sort of knew that he should. So the marketing team persuaded him to get on board with RealFlow, because they were like, we only need you in front of the camera once. We're just going to capture a few minutes of you chatting about what you had for breakfast, what you're doing today. And then the marketing team, now the ask of him is they send him a script, and they're just like, can you just do 2 or 3 takes of the script, say it how naturally you would, record it in a voice memo, send it back to us. And then they use that to create the video, and they're able to kind of create quick video. So I think that's a great application of like using AI as opposed to the purely full AI generated avatars that we're seeing.
I love the example that you gave, that you could be a bit camera shy, or maybe your English isn't perfect, or maybe you want to reach German market and you don't know the language. There's like so many reasons why maybe it could be a like an opportunity for someone who wouldn't do it otherwise. And that's always valuable in business, of course, when you can get someone over the line. Maybe they get more comfortable over time. What are some of the tips? I hear it from a lot of founders when I say that I'm doing podcast or videos like this that we're doing right now. A lot of founders are saying that I could never do that. I'm not good with camera. What are the tips that you would share to those people?
I mean, firstly, like everything in life, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. So just start doing it. Your first videos won't be great, but then you just start to, I think, once you've done it a few times, you start to realize it's fine. I think there's a few tips that I would always recommend. Get a good camera. I mean, everyone's got an amazing camera, or the rear camera on their phone. So that's a great starting point. For 15 quid, you can pick up a nice tripod off Amazon that you can position and get around your desk. Lighting is important. Like I'm sat in front of a window, that always helps. So, I think just with a little bit of know-how, I'll say good camera, stands, a microphone, but even the MacBook mics are good enough. So I think we're just getting a kind of the right setup. Doesn't need to be perfect. Doesn't need to be studio 4K high, production, particularly for short form stuff that you're going to be using on social. And then when it comes to the content, I mean, a few things I do. Sometimes I will script something out and I'll use a teleprompter, just running behind my camera. If I know I want to be concise and on point, and that does also take a bit of practice of like nailing the ability to read the teleprompter without it sounding like you're reading. But again, that's just practice. A lot of the video software, like I'm a massive fan of Veed. It's great for like eye corrections as well. So if you are sort of reading across the screen, it will correct that. So things like that. But if you're not using a teleprompter, having someone like jumping on a call like this with one of your team and just having them ask you some questions that tease you up so it sounds more conversational, that's another good tip that I'd recommend. So I think there's loads of different ways now of creating short video content, and a bit like anything, like particularly with LinkedIn, I just think you got to almost get over your sort of imposter syndrome and just be willing to put. I think you're a great example of that, right? Just being willing to put stuff out there. Know that even any post you put out there, particularly with the LinkedIn algorithm right now, only a fraction of your audience is going to see it anyway. So just almost like forget about that. Don't worry too much about whether the post is going to hit or not. Some will, some won't. But I think consistently doing it is crucial. And I think video still on LinkedIn, despite LinkedIn are making a really big push for video content. Now, like everything, marketers will break stuff because we'll overuse it and we'll flood it with AI, but I still think video is a great way of like getting yourself out there on LinkedIn and building some of that trust and, as you said, that sort of recognition that you touched on.
Yeah, one of the hardest things for me when I started doing a bit more videos and especially like trying to explain my product is that when you plan it too much, then it starts to lose this kind of natural vibe and feel. And at the same time, if you don't plan it at all, it's really hard to stick to that. Okay, I don't want to go like talking about my product more than 5 minutes. I want to keep it like, like a short that someone gets an overview. And striking that balance has been the hardest for me. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, totally. And I try and block, if I know I want to do some filming, I'll try and block out like a couple of hours in the morning. I think morning's the best time to do it as well, when you're sort of up and awake and feeling fresh. And then, it does require a bit of planning and you end up doing 2 or 3 takes. There's lots of resources out there. Like I say, Veed is a great product for video editing once you've quickly got your upload into there. It does require a bit of planning, but as you say, you don't want to be like spending days and days. Don't overthink it. I think it's important.
How I approach my LinkedIn, for example, is that I post like 4 times a week or so, but I only write things that are something that I'm thinking I'm doing. I don't think about it too much, like how strategically right this one is. And my simple reason for that is that I believe it's the only way for me to be motivated and actually, write consistently. If I would be overthinking it, more strategic about it, then I would probably lose some of the motivation over time, couldn't get it done. So I think that's, at least for me, that's been one of the key things to learn, that like the audience doesn't really care about how strategic you are with their topic. They're more like, okay, if this resonates with me, then they are keen to take a look at your profile. They want to learn more about your brand, your service. And many people come to me like through LinkedIn Connect saying that, oh, I saw your LinkedIn post, I went to your website, I watched the video. And it's like, okay, great. Thanks for joining my team. How are you? It's an interesting flow.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think like that consistency that you've been doing, you've got to be willing to play the long game here. The posts that you're doing this week might be your customer in Q4. I had an inbound call the other day, and I asked the person where they'd heard about RealFlow, and he said, "Oh, I've been following your LinkedIn content, and I'm not as prolific as you are." And he was like, "I've been following your content for ages." And he was like, and I made a mental note that this was something we wanted to look at as part of our new website rebuilds. And I went back through. He had never liked or engaged with any post I'd ever done. He followed me, but we weren't connected. And it just shows that, like, I think it's like the 80-20 rule of 80% of your audience are just silently on there. They are seeing it. So it was a good reminder for me that, yeah, like the consistency of just putting stuff out there, it's all about sort of building those foundations and playing that long game.
Yeah, let's talk about the product a bit. How do I get started if I want to get started with RealFlow, and especially if I don't have any video experience? How does it work?
Yeah, so we've got two different models and two different types of customers. We've got your kind of classic self-serve SaaS product-led, generally startup, smaller businesses, founder-led brands, people who are comfortable with creating video and are already up and running and just want to add the product to their site. So we built a kind of very intuitive, easy self-serve experience, low entry point. Our sort of entry plan's £39 a month just to kind of get started. And then alongside that, I'm obsessed with this notion of service as a software, the switch. I first heard Des Traynor talk about that. He's the chief product officer at Intercom at SaaS Stock a couple of years ago, and it really resonated with me in this new age of AI. People expect the products to do a lot of the heavy lifting for them. So we've also, our other types of customers are typically maybe larger businesses or people who are like, look, we've never done video before, we don't know where to start. And I think this blend of like service and the software, and for us, some of that is within the products. We've built tooling that helps you sort of plan and analyze where and how to use RealFlow, build the interactive journeys, generate scripts for the videos, and we can also help with the video creation. So we've got an increasing number of customers now, typically larger businesses, particularly in B2B events, as I was mentioning earlier when we spoke, where they want the service and the software. So we're able to say, hey, we can provide a great platform and we can provide the services with that. We can help you plan out, we can help with the video creation, we can help, in some cases we've got a network of videographers now. We can send a videographer into the office, we can get studio space if needed. So they're the two different ways people can kind of get going with RealFlow. Collaborate with us and we'll help you, or get going yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the future for a lot of SaaS companies today. Like in the past, when I was building my SaaS company, all investors wanted it, but also customers kind of wanted like this, only a solution that they can then start using, a simple one. That was kind of the most valuable SaaS company to build. But right now it feels like there's so much going on with the AI, that the tools are developing so fast, and it's really hard for a normal buyer to kind of keep up that, okay, what should I actually do if I start with this one? And I think the service component will be a crucial one. Also, another point to that is that maybe the running the services is a bit cheaper now than it was in the past. So in the past, if we would have customized or provided a service, it would have meant a lot of people. Now maybe you can use AI to kind of like, okay, I can give you like a feeling of a service, but it's not like it's gonna take like one person's attention for.
Yeah, that's so true. I think one of the exciting things about being back in building mode again is the ability, I think, to build something meaningful and scale something without A, having to go raise millions of venture capital, and B, having to build a huge team. Andy and I, we want to see how far we can take RealFlow with a team of less than 10. Yeah. And we're not planning on raising VC money. We've raised a little bit of sort of angel money, but we're not planning on raising VC rounds. So I think you're right, the opportunity there. And then on the services side, like again, any early stage founders, I just think the classic, like, do things that don't scale, and the closer you can stay to customers, the more you can fill product gaps with people. You learn so much. You build those relationships. We're becoming like the best users of our customer because we are the best users of our product because we're so close to it. We're so close to our customers. We're really learning how they want to use it, and then that is influencing the direction we take the product to. So many benefits to be had for sort of adding those services, even if you don't charge for them in the early days, and just give the customer a great experience. There's a lot to be said for really staying tight to your early customers.
Yeah, and I think that's one of also another change that, or at least what I'm thinking to do differently, is that maybe in the past the SaaS service kind of like the best way to build was it to create something that works for one vertical and then maybe adjust it a bit to another vertical, but like expanding from one vertical to another just felt like the logical choice. Right now it feels to me that it's more like, okay, pick who your like the real really good fit customer is and then go broad with that customer. But like instead of going, that's how I'm thinking right now when I'm kind of looking at like what Claude, for example, is bringing to market all the time. Like, let's pretend that I'm working at Figma. I would be a bit worried about the Claude design, whether or not it's the exact same product, but from customer's point of view, who's typing in Claude that how do I design this thing? My guess is that they're gonna just design it for that using Claude Design instead of pointing you to Figma. And then like the more sort of like broad verticals you serve, the more under risk you probably are to kind of be replaced by these more generic tools. But that's just how I'm thinking it right now, based on discussing with the customer.
Yeah, I think that vertical focus is really important. I think in those early days, you have got to go cast a wide net, and you've got to go and experiment, and you've got to go down some blind alleyways that perhaps you end up coming back and going down the next one. You have to do that stuff in year one as you figure out. But once you start to feel some pull and some traction in a particular vertical, particular use case, the quicker you can double down on that. And I think a lot of this does ultimately come back to what does success look like for you? What type of business are you trying to build? If you're planning on raising tens and hundreds of millions and building a unicorn, then it's a different story. You've got a very different type of journey. But I think the appeal now for lots of founders today is we're taking this sort of seed strapping approach. We've raised a small seed round. We're not planning on going. The goal is not like success is not we got to Series A. Success is profitability. At break even point, sustainable profitability, build a great business with a small lean team. And I think that also influences the decisions you take. So say once you feel that pull of like that particular vertical, then double down on that and go focus, and everything becomes a little bit easier when you start to do that rather than trying to be something to everybody that you just can't do.
I'm aligned with that. We're trying to do it with my co-founders as two of us as long as possible, and maybe hire, but most likely just have more like freelance or agentic way of finding people, whatever that's gonna be. But I think there's the future where you're not necessarily hiring agents to help your company. Maybe you're hiring someone who knows to run those agents, and that can be more fluid relationship than maybe the past sort of hiring.
Definitely. It's an exciting, daunting time to be building, and I think people's skills and the type of people you bring into the team is changing pretty fast, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The when your customers are using the product, what are the sort of like the most successful ways of using it, or the best practices? What's been working and what's not?
So there's, I guess, three primary use cases in which people use RealFlow. I touched on one of them. A vertical we're really focusing on, B2B event organizers, event websites, where events are very human things. They're about getting people together in person. Most event websites are generally pretty statics or digital brochures, so that's a great fit for the product, showcasing the team behind the event, helping guide sponsors and exhibitors to the right part of the site, helping drive attendee registration, helping educate people about the show. That's a great use case. On broader sort of B2B marketing websites, it's typically about whether it's like a homepage use cases we talked about earlier, any page sort of deeper into your site where you think you as the founder or one of your team can just add to that experience, where you would love to, we'd all love to speak to every visitor on our site, right? And be like, hey, how can I help? What are you looking for? Can I answer any questions? And video is a great way of doing that. So pricing page is a great use case. Everybody's pricing is often quite complicated, takes a bit of getting around. So having your best salesperson in 30 seconds say, okay, let me explain how our pricing works. These are the three variables. Click below to, there's three questions people always ask about our pricing. So click below and I'll answer those for you. Those kind of things is great. And then the other use case is more of a sales use case. we've got a growing number of customers. This is how you and I started working together. A sort of growing number of customers who are using RealFlow on landing pages as part of account-based prospecting. So adding RealFlow to a targeted landing page where it's the sales rep talking directly to the buyer, something that makes them, we know outbound is so hard right now. So if you can kind of cut through the noise with video, and when they land on the landing page, the rep is there. I've put this, I've gone to the effort, and maybe they've used AI, maybe not, but I've gone to, if it's a high value enterprise account, going to the effort of putting a video together explaining why you're getting in touch, what the value proposition is powerful, and we've seen some people have some pretty cool results with that use case too. So pretty versatile, flexible product, but there's the sort of most popular use cases.
Sending a video to a prospect is just like, that's so powerful. Like I've seen it so many times, and what's super cool about it is that sometimes my prospects, they actually come back to me with another video. So if like, even if you wouldn't create a full landing page like you can do with us, but like if you send any kind of a video to a person, it's very likely to cause some sort of a reaction from them, and kind of help you stand out, as long as you're obviously talking about something meaningful. I've also seen the kind of the opposite side, that sometimes people are just like, they connect with me and they're instantly asking that, can I send you a video? And I'm like, of what? Like, can you tell me, like, why am I interested in this video? So that's like, that approach doesn't work for me. But when I'm actually like discussing already further along, then it helps. Are your customers using this more for like very early touch base, or towards the end of the process, or is it a spectrum of
I would say typically earlier in that journey, when you're sort of prospecting into accounts for the first time. We're not, I guess once someone's into a deal cycle, you're probably, maybe if you're using a digital sales room for that sort of experience. So that on the sales use case, it tends to be that early, as part of that early outreach, when you just sort of build that connection, stand out, build some familiarity.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, but thanks so much, Chris, for joining the chat. I learned a ton about videos, and I'm super inspired to create some more videos for myself, and I'm sure that listeners are as well. But where we can find more information about RealFlow and follow you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is best place to find me, Chris Wixon. RealFlow, REEL, like videorealflow.com. Go check out the website. And yeah, Tony, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed the chat, and likewise, love what you're building with LandingRabbit, and look forward to collaborating in other ways in the future.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, and let's keep collaborating.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Tony.